Hi, this is Dr. Joni. Let's talk. Today we're going to talk about the difference between an IEP and a 504 plan. Now, some of you are very familiar with this because your children or you may have had one while you were in school. But I have a lot of parents that when you start mentioning IEP or 504 plan, they look at you like you're speaking a foreign language and have two heads. 504 plan and an IEP are programs within the public school systems whereby if you have a child with a special disability, that they can be offered special assistance within the school so that they can continue to be successful academically. Now, there's a difference. Both are state and federally mandated. However, there are different degrees based on the severity of the disability. So for those who have, for example, ADHD, oftentimes that by law will then make the child eligible for accommodations under Legislative Act 504. Okay, something like that. That's where the 504 plan comes from. Okay, now this is a lower level of accommodations because it's thought that if you have ADHD, that individual has a special need or a disability that may make it difficult for them to be successful academically. A 504 plan, however, only allows for moderate accommodations within the general education environment. So for example, if you have ADHD, we know that kids with ADHD oftentimes have difficult time sitting still. So a 504 plan can allow minor accommodations such as like a wiggly seat, you know, the little seat that you sit on that rocks back and forth, or maybe allow you to have a stress ball in the class. Or maybe even Velcro up under your desk if you fidget a lot and you want to have the feel of a certain texture. It will also enable someone with ADHD who has difficulty sitting still to maybe have a standing desk, you know, the Vera desk. Although I do not work for Vera, I just remember the commercial. But anyway, it allows a child to maybe stand up to do their work or to maybe go to the bathroom or take frequent walks in the hallway without having to ask permission. A 504 plan also may allow somebody with ADHD who is easily distracted to sit at the front of the classroom or to sit close to the teacher. Also under 504 plan accommodations, that child may get extra time for certain tests or requirements or projects, or might even be able to test in a private room. The bottom line is individuals with ADHD can be granted special accommodations within the school or special supports within the classroom to enable them to be successful. Now, just because you have ADHD does not mean automatically that you qualify for a 504 plan, okay? What has to happen is that as a parent, you will need to request in writing from your school that you have a student support team meeting. Now, every school district calls it something different, but basically it's where your school administrators, typically the special education advisor, possibly an assistant principal, probably your student's teacher, and maybe some other administrators within the school get together and have a meeting with you to discuss your child's diagnosis, meaning ADHD, as well as how they are struggling within the school environment. If it is determined within that meeting that your child may be eligible for some plan of accommodation, then typically that school team will investigate or look into the situation further. They might do additional testing, they may gather additional information through an observation, but we have to give them some time to gather their information and to make recommendations. And so typically what happens is you come back to a second meeting after they've done that, and then they determine after testing or evaluating your child whether they in fact do qualify. And if they do, then you negotiate what will those accommodations under the 504 plan look like. Okay, now, again, it's not a requirement. Everybody is not entitled to a 504 plan just because you have ADHD, but what you are entitled to is the option to make that request and have that request evaluated. Now, from there, though, there's something called an IEP, or an Individualized Education Plan. Now, these are individuals who also have special needs, but because of their special need, may require additional accommodations of the academic curriculum. Okay, so if you need a 504 plan, that curriculum isn't changing. Just the supports within that general education class may increase. But if you have a special circumstance or a special need or diagnosis that would necessitate that educational environment or that curriculum changes, then that's when the schools will look at something called an individualized education plan. So basically, they are individualizing that educational curriculum to support your child's needs based on their diagnosis. Now, individuals who have learning disabilities like dyslexia, dyscalculia, or dysgraphia, or who might have an intellectual disability, individuals with autism. Oftentimes, because of their special needs, it's not enough to just provide additional supports in the general education classroom. Those individuals may, in fact, require a specialized classroom. Maybe they just need specialized pull-out services. Maybe math is particularly hard for someone who has a math learning disability. So they have to be pulled out of the general ed classroom to be put into a specialized math curriculum so that they can learn under those special conditions. They will have inclusive classrooms. Sometimes you'll have an autism classroom or an intellectual disability classroom where the entire curriculum has been modified, taking the individual disability like autism or an intellectual disability into consideration. Again, if your child can qualify based on their diagnosis for an individualized education plan, the way you go about that is to make that request in writing to your school and provide any supplemental diagnostic information that you may have. So for example, if you've gone to a clinical psychologist to have some cognitive or achievement testing done, and they've written up a report, and based on that testing, they've given the diagnosis of dyslexia or an intellectual disability or something like that, you want to provide a copy of those testing results to your school so that they can use that as the basis to support having that student support team meeting to consider the IEP or Individualized Education Plan. Here's the bottom line. You want to involve your school and make those requests so that you can provide the accommodations necessary for your child to be successful academically. The key, though, is the least restrictive environment. You may have heard that buzzword before, and you may say to yourself, well, what does least restrictive environment mean? What that means is we want to keep your child as mainstreamed as possible and provide as many supports that they may need in that mainstream environment, or pull them out selectively so that they can maintain that general education. We don't just want to automatically, because of a diagnosis, assume that, oh, your child has ADHD, and really the only issue is that your child needs extra time, but I'm going to pull them out of this general ed program and put them into a specialized educational plan or group with just ADHD folks. No, we want the least restrictive environment. We want as few restrictions as possible on your child's education so that they can be successful. The key is, if you don't understand this, you may need to look into hiring an educational advocate to really bring you up to date on what the laws are in your state and what you can expect in the meeting with your school. Again, if I haven't answered your questions, or if you have more specific questions that you'd like answered, don't hesitate to hit the Contact Me section of this app and submit another question. Always, you can ask Dr. Joni if there's something very specific to your individual case that you want answered, or if you don't have the month to wait for that response. Looking forward to talking to you again. Let's talk soon.